Cosmic Secrets. Unlock the Power of Prayer. A Charles Fillmore article. Ideas are formed in the mind. Words are the vehicles through which ideas make themselves manifest. Therefore, words have a certain power on their plane of consciousness. That is, the word may be used in an independent way to dissolve an idea that has become concrete in the consciousness. The word itself is representative only, but when used by a master in mental dynamics, it takes on a character and power proportionate to his understanding of the inner forces of being. John Smith, for instance, might give voice to a saying that would pass current among his immediate acquaintances as a truth, but as he has not sounded the depths of the mental realm and become cognizant of the idea upon which that truth rests, his saying would carry with it a mere husk. It would not be vitalized with self-increasing perpetuity, like the word of one who had aroused that inner life in his consciousness and attached it to his words. This is why the sayings of the prophets and mystics have such staying, enduring qualities. They are attached by invisible currents of life to the one great Father, and they have within themselves the self-perpetuating germ that keeps them growing from year to year. The scriptures of the different races are examples of the outward expression of the inner germ. The book of Job antedates all history. It has been preserved through all the changes that have come and gone in the rise and fall of nations. It is supposed to have been written by one of the mystics of the nomad tribes of Arabia, and from that source it drifted into the Hebrew scriptures. It may have come to the Arabs from the more ancient peoples of Egypt, but it never lost itself with the loss of its custodians. They were wiped out, their lands taken from them, and they no longer known among the nations of the earth. But the mystic word of Job was not consumed. This is true of nearly all the sacred writings of all people. Secular histories and records of the exploits of men and the affairs of nations have disappeared and been forgotten, because they told the tale of the passing world of flesh. But the records of those who had to do with the realm higher than this are preserved, and they are living again today as they have lived ever since they were given forth, through the power derived from the Spirit. The true prophet of God does not have to even write his words down. He may speak them to the ethers, and through their own inherent power of perpetuity and growth, they will find their way into the minds of men. Jesus Christ did not write a line that we know of, except in the sand. Yet his words are treasured up today as the most precious that we have, and rivers of blood have been shed in quarrels over the technical meaning of these words which were written down by men years after they were voiced by Jesus. We thus know by these examples that the word of truth has life in itself, and that it cannot perish or grow less with the changes that come with the fleeting years. We also know that the more spiritual the one who gives forth these words, the more enduring they are, and the more powerfully do they move men. The words of Jesus Christ were given to a very common people, according to the world's standard, by a carpenter in a remote corner of the earth. Yet these words have moved men for 1900 years to dare and do, as no other words that were ever uttered. When Jesus said, "My words are spirit and they are life," he touched that inner word that created all things, and he knew that his words were vivified with a life essence and a moving power that would demonstrate the truth of his statement. These words have rung through the souls of men and set them afire with God's Spirit throughout the ages. This is because they are spiritual words. They have within them the seeds of a divine life, and they grow in the minds of all who give them place, just as a beautiful flower or a great tree grows from the seed germ planted in the ground. Jesus recognized that the consciousness of man was submerged in the things of sense, that it could not perceive truth in the abstract when presented to it, and that it must, under these conditions, be stirred into activity through some stimulating force dropped into it from without. Hence he sent forth his powerful words of truth to the thirsty souls, and said unto them, "Keep my sayings." To keep a saying is to revolve it in the mind, to go over it in all its aspects, to believe in it as a truth, and to treasure it as a saving balm in time of need. All peoples have in all ages known about the saving power of words, and have used them to the best of their understanding. The Hebrews bound upon their foreheads and wrists parchments with words of Scripture written upon them. The Hindus, Japanese, Chinese, and nearly all known nations, have their various ways of applying the sacred words to the mollification of their ills, and the invocation of the invisible powers to aid them in both their material and spiritual needs. Although these methods are faulty, in that they drop into the use of the letter of the word instead of its spirit, they are useful to us as indicators of the universal belief in the power of the sacred word. We know that words express ideas, and to get at their substantial part, we must move into the realm of ideas. Ideas are in the mind, and it is there we must go if we want to get the force of our words. The Hebrews' phylacteries and the Hindus' prayer wheels are suggestive of the wordy prayers of the Christian. But this is not keeping the sayings of Jesus Christ, nor reading the inner substance of the mystical word. This can be done only by those who believe in the omnipresent Spirit of God, and in faith keep in mind the words which express His goodness, wisdom, and power. Jesus Christ more fully voiced this nearness of God to man than any of the prophets, and His words are correspondingly vivified with that inner fire and life. He said that those who kept His sayings should even escape death, so potent was the energy attached to them. This is a startling promise. But when we understand that it was not the personal man Jesus making it, but the Father speaking through Him, then we know that it was not an idle one. For He said, "The word which ye hear is not mine, but the Father which sent me." This is the reason why these words of Jesus endure, and why they are more and more attracting the attention of men as the years go on. Whoever takes these words into his mind should first consecrate himself to the truth which they represent. That truth is not the formulated doctrine of any church, nor the creed of any sect, not even Christianity. That truth is written in the inner sanctuary of every soul, and all know it without external formulas. It is the intuitive perception of what is right in the sight of God and men. It is that truth and justice which every man recognizes as the foundation of true living. Whoever consecrates himself to follow this inner monitor and live up to its promptings, regardless of social or commercial customs, has consecrated himself to do God's will, and he is fitted to take the words of Jesus Christ and make them his own. It is no idle experiment, this keeping in the mind the words of Jesus. It is a very momentous undertaking and may be the most important period in the life of the individual. There must be sincerity and earnestness and right motive, and withal a determination to understand the spiritual import. This requires attention, time, and patience in the application of the mind to solving the deeper meanings of the sayings which we are urged to keep. People have a way of dealing with sacred words that is too superficial to bring results. They juggle with words. They toss them in the air with the heavenly tone, or the oratorical ring, and count it a compliance with divine requirements. But this is only another form of the prayer wheel and phylactery. It is that lip service that Jesus condemned, because its object is to be heard of men. To keep the sayings of Jesus means much more than this. It has a significance peculiar to the inner life, and it is only after this inner life is awakened that the true sense of the spiritual word is understood. But the sincere keeper of Jesus' sayings will, through his devotions, awaken that inner spirit, and the Lord will come to him and minister to his calls as carefully as to the adept mystic. Jesus said, "My words are spirit." Spirit is that indescribable, invisible cause that produces effects. He who lives in the consciousness of effects alone can know nothing about spirit, because he has not made himself acquainted with the realm in which it operates. But no one is barred from becoming acquainted with spirit and residing in its domain. It is just as accessible as the material and far more attractive. If you want to know about spirit, you will have to take up spiritual ways. You cannot go to spirit land by traveling the lower road. It does not lie on the map of the earth, and no man has found it in his physical geography. Spiritual things are spiritually discerned, was the discovery of one long ago, but he had no copyright on the find. To him, it was a revelation, just as it will be to you and to everyone when it dawns upon the consciousness. It is a great advantage to the spiritual seeker to make this discovery. Millions of people in every age have tried to find spirit through matter and material ways, but their dust has always mingled with that of Mother Earth. They have not fulfilled the promise of Jesus because they have seen death and succumbed to its dissolving hand. They have missed the goal because they did not keep the sayings of Jesus. They kept the letter instead of the spirit. They applied in an abstract way what was intended for everyday practical use. Jesus tells us his words are spirit, and then says, keep them. How can one keep a thing which he knows nothing about? How can you keep the words and sayings of Jesus unless you get right where he was and grasp them with your mind, your spirit? Surely there is no other way to keep his sayings. Those who are doing so from any other standpoint are missing the mark. They may be honest, and they may be good, sincere people, living what the world calls pure, Christian lives, but they are not going to get the fruits of Jesus' words unless they comply with the requirements. You cannot get blood out of a turnip is a trite saying. Neither can you get spirit and life out of matter and death. Unless you perceive that there is something more in the doctrine of Jesus than keeping up a worldly moral standard as preparation for salvation after death, you will fall very short of being a real Christian. Jesus did not depreciate moral living, but neither did he promise that it fulfilled the law of God. Very negative people are frequently trusty and moral, but that does not make them Christians after the Jesus Christ plan. His Christianity had a living God in it, a God that lived in him and spoke through him. It was a religion of fire and water, life as well as purity. Men are to be alive, not merely exist in a half-dead way for a few years and then go out with a splutter like a tallow dip. Jesus Christ's men are to be electric lights that glow and gleam with perpetual current from the one omnipresent energy. The connection with that current is to be made through the mind by setting up sympathetic vibrations. The mind moves upon ideas, and ideas are made visible in words. Hence, the holding of right words in the mind will set it going at a rate proportion to the dynamic power of the idea back of those words. A word with a lazy idea back of it will not stimulate the mind. The word must represent swift, strong spiritual ideas in order to infuse the white energy of God into the mind. This is the kind of words that Jesus reveled in. He delighted to make great and mighty claims for his God, himself, his words, and for all men. I and my Father are one. All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. The Father is greater than I. Is it not written in your law? I said, ye are gods? Ye shall do these things and greater, were some of the claims he stimulated his mind with, and he produced the results. He fulfilled his words. But he did not copyright those words, nor forbid anyone using them. He importuned you and me to keep them as he had kept them, right in our hearts, realizing that it was no idle repetition of idle words, but the setting up a living fire in the soul that should never go out. This is what the sayings of Jesus will do for everybody who keeps them in the inner sanctuary of the mind. They will kindle a fire there that will burn higher and higher until it licks the very canopy of heaven and burns a hole in the blue vault of truth, revealing the wonders of God to the astonished eyes of man. Jesus' sayings are varied, but all are food for the minds of his disciples. None of them are too hard for him who would be a disciple, nor are they too far from his present realization. What you now comprehend is not the ultimate of your ability in any direction. Because you do not consciously feel that you and the Father are one is no argument against its truth. Men in high states of civilization lived for centuries on this planet without knowing that it was a globe, and that there were other continents just across the seas whose shores were inhabited. The race today has like relation to the spiritual universe. We look with longing eyes across the sea of doubts, fears, and delusions, trying to catch sight of that promised land, but there seems no Columbus to pilot us over. But here comes one who is to us a Columbus, and he has given us a ship and compass. He sailed that sea and found the other shore. He asks us to follow him and keep his sayings. They are the ship and compass. In about 20 different places in the New Testament, Jesus is recorded as saying, in substance, "Follow me." To the rich young man who desired to enter into eternal life, Jesus recommended the keeping of all commandments. But in addition, there was the inevitable, "Sell all thou hast and give to the poor, and come and follow me. Faithfulness to law alone will never make you a follower of Jesus in the regeneration. You must go deeper than this. You must know the secrets of the mainsprings of the universe. These are revealed in spirit, and spirit is found only by those who go about finding it in an orderly way. People who have for years been students of the science of Christ, and who have a clear intellectual perception of its truths, are yet outside the kingdom of spirit. They anxiously ask, "Why is it that I do not realize the presence of spirit?" Have you kept the sayings of Jesus? Have you said to yourself, in silence and aloud, until the very ethers vibrated with its truths, "I and the Father are one"? Have you opened the pores of your mind by mentally repeating the one solvent of crystallized condition, "I in thee and thou in me"? This means mental discipline day after day and night after night, until the inertia of the mentality is overcome, and the way opened for the descent of the Spirit. The personal consciousness is like a house with all the doors and windows barred. He who lives within may hear voices without, but the doors and windows unlock from within, and it is left with him to unfasten them. The doors and windows of the mentality are concreted ideas, and they swing loose when the right word is spoken to them. Jesus Christ voiced a whole army of right words, and if you will take up his sayings and make them yours, they will open all the doors of your mentality, and the light and air will come in, and you will, in due time, be able to step forth. No one can do this for you. You do not really want another to do it, although you sometimes think how nice it would be if some master of spiritual ideas would suddenly help you right into his understanding. But this is a childish dream of the moment. You want to be yourself, and you can only be yourself by living out your own life and finding its issues at the fountainhead. If it were possible for one to reveal truth to another, we should have heaven cornered by cunning manipulators of mind, and its glories stored up in warehouses awaiting a higher market. Let us be thankful that God is no respecter of persons, that truth cannot be revealed by one mortal to another. God is a special, personal Father to every one of his children, and from no other source can they get truth. A Jesus who has clearly revealed the Father in his consciousness may tell all men how it came about. He may point that way out. He may say, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." But there is always a condition attached to its realization by the seeker. He must believe, or he must keep my sayings, or follow me. Summed up, it is that by adopting his methods you shall find the same place in the Father that he has found. But the Father still continues his monopoly on truth. Many have claimed to be able to pass it out, but it has always been in the shape of sealed packages. Ignorant people are thus deluded, and the deception is sometimes kept alive for ages, especially if there be an appendage of commerce. When religion becomes a ship of industry, it is frequently kept afloat long after it has been scuttled. Mammon then masquerades as God, and fools march in the procession. But Jesus did not peddle his doctrine. He did not copyright his sayings. He claimed to hold converse with the Father, and demonstrated extraordinary abilities in many ways in substantiation thereof. He did not found a sect, or in any way fence off his doctrine. He opened wide the way. "Whosoever believes in me, and keeps my words, shall do thus and so, shall do as I do, and do greater things." He made a special prayer to the Father that all who kept his words might be made one with the Father as he was one with him. These mighty sayings of Jesus are handed down to us. By using them in the silent corridors of our own consciousness, we may come into that same place where he now is. "If a man love me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him, and make our abode with him." End of article. Subscribe for more content on your personal power.